In 2024, privately, because I don't like to tell people about my goals until I actually achieve them, I achieved a series of goals together that a lot of people think are impossible. I seem to talk to clients every week and they'll tell me that things like this are impossible, but I'm very average genetics wise, and I think people drastically underestimate their physical potential and what they can achieve. So this video is to show you what I did, but the whole point is to inspire you to take on a massive physical challenge of your own. Because the journey to achieving that physical challenge is one of the most meaningful experiences you can have for self-development of your mind and your personality in general. So to start by giving you context, by the end of 2023, I had traveled to about 7 or 8 countries the year before. I'd partied more than I'd ever partied in my life, and even though I'd kept my training consistent all year long, and to look at me, I looked great, I felt like I was way too comfortable. I'd been eating out in too many restaurants, I'd been going to too many parties with friends and meeting new friends all the time, and I had spent the year indulging in everything from croissants in Paris to the best nightclubs in the world in Ibiza and Berlin. And I wanted to set myself some scary goals in 2024 to shock me out of my comfort zone. Now, something that you may not know that I've been aware of for more than 10 years, and it's been one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life, for my own development and for my career as a personal trainer and a fitness coach, is that your brain is wired to reward you and feel incredible enjoying things only after you have to work very hard for them first. Andrew Huberman explains it perfectly here, but I've heard it explained by many neuroscientists, functional medicine doctors and psychologists. You're not meant to have big rewards without doing very hard things first. So in 2024, I started the year by doing a detox cleanse, and then I did a photo shoot at the end of the month with one of the best photographers in the UK and learned in person how to do my first ever muscle up. Then I came back to Ibiza and I did a 5-month bodybuilding / gymnastics bodybuilding prep where I aimed to look my best for summer. And to finish the year, I did a 270-kilometer ultra marathon, the width of Ireland, in 4 days. So the first challenge in January was I wanted to do a detox cleanse. A lot of people think this is impossible, and I think this is one of the best physical and mental challenges you can possibly do with enormous benefits for your health. So many people talk to me about doing a 3 to 5 day fast as impossible, but it's very possible. I've done it myself 5 times and I've helped many clients through it, and these enormous health benefits. But I also wanted to do a photo shoot with a photographer in England called Aaron Dunworth, and I had worked with him before after my first bodybuilding prep. If you can excuse the faces being made here, it's very blue steel, but back when I was doing that photo shoot when I was 26 years old, it was after my first bodybuilding prep. And that whole bodybuilding prep was all about just looking as good as possible. And while bodybuilding is great and it taught me so much, fitness for me, especially since doing the bodybuilding shows, has been about far more than just looking good. So the meaning behind this photo shoot that I've never actually talked about in person since was I wanted to display, yes, I look great, but I didn't want to do a bodybuilding prep to look great for a photo shoot. I wanted to prove you could look great just by eating healthy, doing some fasting and focusing on whole foods. Another meaning of the photo shoot was I wanted to incorporate flexibility and flexibility positions that my body could express, as it's one of the things I'm super proud of with myself and my clients, is to be able to express flexibility. I think it's one of the most incredible things your body can do, is hold these flexibility positions, and it's unbelievably underrated and underutilized for athletes and for people in general. And the third meaning I wanted to have in the photo shoot was for the gymnastics. The gymnastics challenges for me have been some of the toughest things I've ever learnt, and they've taught me extreme patience, and I'm still not even that good at them. And just to be able to hold your body in certain positions is a huge challenge. So I wanted to capture that in the photo shoot as well. So the photos of me looking very aesthetic in the Calvin Klein, most typical outfit you can have for a physique photo shoot, and then the flexibility positions, because that style of training has been so important to me, and then also the gymnastics, which has taught me patience, and sometimes the biggest strength you can have in your body is just being able to hold a certain position. Also, when I was in London, I did a one-on-one PT session with a personal trainer that I admired online for years called Juan Forgia. So he does some of these incredible feats of gymnastics. I'll put one on screen now, where he has this enormous range of motion in these really, really challenging gymnastic movements that I've always wanted to learn. So I hit my first ever bar muscle up with him, and I also did a seminar with Phil Lerney about how to set up a training program and process for training extremely wealthy and busy people. So Phil Lerney used to charge £360 sterling an hour back 15 years ago as a PT in England. He's incredibly well respected in the fitness industry, and he just has an unbelievable wealth of knowledge about absolutely everything in fitness, and he's always been ahead of the curve. When I started my journey as a personal trainer, I did some of his seminars, so it was unbelievable to catch up with him again 10 years later on this VIP training experience in London. Got to experience these unbelievable facilities with the highest end equipment, and he explained in great detail how you would set up a 6-month, 12-month and even 2 or 3 year program for these elite people who have no problem paying a premium for an unbelievable service. Believe it or not, I have implemented the exact same service that he outlined in this course for millionaires and sports stars and professionals earning millions of euro per year to my GAA players. The process he outlined is the exact one I use, and it's a reason why my results with my clients are so impressive. But I was very inspired by the way he set up his process in that exact seminar. So after a month of doing a digestive detox with the photo shoot to cap it all off, I came back to Ibiza and I set myself this target of doing a photo shoot. Doing a photo shoot used to be a big thing in fitness back when I was starting to become a PT, but it's not actually quite as common these days. But back when I started to be a PT, you did your bodybuilding prep, whether you did a show at the end of it or not, but you did a bodybuilding style prep, and at the end of it you do a photo shoot. So my photo shoot date was my birthday, and I wanted to look my best around then, and I ended up possibly building my best ever physique. I'll put plenty of photos and videos here on screen now, and the way I did it was through a bodybuilding and gymnastics hybrid. So 4 days a week of training and 3 days I'd be doing flexibility or cardio. The 4 days of training were broken into push, pull, legs, upper body volume. On the start of the push day, I did L-sits into a handstand push-up. On the start of the pull day, I did rope climbing. And at the start of the upper body volume day, I did muscle ups on the bar, which I just learned in England, built up to 8 consecutive reps in the gym. And I did muscle ups on rings as well. On the leg day, I built up to 100 kg squat for 20 and 130 kg for 6. And I found I was able to mix the bodybuilding style training with the gymnastics training very, very well to make myself look and feel very, very athletic for my 33rd birthday. As regards calories and macros for that bodybuilding gymnastics style prep across those 4 months, I didn't track calories exactly, but I'd say I started off around 3,000, 3,200 and slowly gave myself less flexibility until I was down around 2,000 to 2,200. So while I was very, very lean at the end of it and I loved the way I looked, I obviously wasn't as lean as you'd need to be hopping on stage as a bodybuilder. But I didn't want to take things to that extreme. I was more interested in being athletic and being strong at the same time as being lean, rather than sacrificing some of that athleticism or strength on the way down to that really, really low body fat, which I had done in the past for bodybuilding shows. Now across this 5-month prep, I had managed to balance things very, very well. Of course, to achieve any of these goals, you need to be very, very obsessed. But the idea that that obsession isn't fun or isn't enjoyable is completely false. The obsession and the sacrifice actually make things very, very fun. And I got to go to Paris and Egypt, 2 of the most meaningful, incredible experiences of my life, with Melly, Keen and Brendan. And we had these unforgettable experiences at Afterlife in Paris with 40,000 people, one of the biggest afterlives ever. And then Kind of Music beside the pyramids of Egypt. It was absolutely incredible. Came home and had 2 or 3 nights out in Ibiza, the opening parties and a couple more. And by the time I was finishing up with this prep around my birthday, I took about a month of still consistently training but having a lot more nights out, meeting friends and just generally not being as strict as I was when I was in prep mode. So with my intense January, my bodybuilding prep complete, my mind had been thinking since my run across Mayo 100 kilometers in a day about a run the length or the width of Ireland. I wasn't sure which one I'd do. I knew I had to stay injury free with all of my training to even have it be a possibility. So I started running and I had 12 weeks to get it right. And I messaged a guy called Brian Cronin, who I follow. He's an incredible runner. He's ran a 5K in 15 minutes. And we set up a FaceTime and I told him about my challenge. He thought it sounded incredible and it sounded extremely difficult. And he asked me when I wanted to do it, thinking that it was going to be about 6 to 12 months. I said I want to do it in 12 weeks. He thought I was absolutely mental, but he said he would agree to give me a running program regardless. Remember, I'm a big fan of taking instructions from other people. Make sure you listen to coaches who know what they're doing. And even if your goals are very, very big and scary, there's usually someone who's crazy enough to give you a bit of advice on it. So the run across Ireland, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something extremely difficult, that I wasn't gone soft after my year or two of traveling. I know that might sound mental to some people, but when you're enjoying yourself with too much food, which, it wasn't as if I got fat or anything, but too much food, too much easy days, I wanted to do something super, super hard. And also to express myself and my beliefs as a coach that athleticism and aesthetics go hand in hand, and the best athletes look incredible. Cristiano Ronaldo, an obvious example. So I wanted to do something extremely tough. I've always been super inspired by the Navy SEALs as well, and this ultimate warrior style of training. So while the original plan was to do 12 weeks of running, I ended up only being able to get 9 or 10 weeks done because I lost a toenail in the first 2 or 3 weeks. And very typically I got sick for 10 days and I just couldn't do any running. I couldn't do any running or lifting. I was absolutely dead and very sick at the end of August in that year. I also started running in August thinking that running in the heat was going to be possible and it was going to be good training because it wouldn't be as hot back in Ireland. But the heat was way too intense, and I documented a lot of it on my Instagram stories, but I could only run at nighttime because August and September were so intense that I was covered in sweat leaving the house walking down the stairs. So after barely 10 weeks of training, I headed back to Ireland, and one of my biggest blessings in life is I've been surrounded by the most unbelievably supportive family, especially my parents. So no matter what my crazy ideas are, I know I'm always going to get some degree of support. So they completely supported the run across Ireland, and it was completely impossible without them. I also did it for charity, so I had a very strong why, that no matter how much my suffering was hurting me in the moment, that it was nothing compared to what the kids in South Africa go through. And I was very consciously aware that I had been in South Africa doing the charity work before, and I always give a strong sense of meaning to, if you can really, really make yourself suffer, but make the reward for that suffering a better life or a better experience for somebody else, it makes the suffering so much easier to the point where it's actually enjoyable. You actually feel this massive sense of accomplishment that you're able to do something hard and it's for someone else. That doesn't come with buying yourself expensive clothes or whatever else materialistic. Doing something for someone else so that they have a better experience even for one day, or a better life like these kids are going to have because the schools with Melon Educate, it makes everything so much easier to be motivated. Even though I'm not a big fan of motivation, I think it's a very misunderstood concept. So with that, I headed back to Ireland. I got to stay in my auntie's house on both sides of the family on the way back. I started in Clontarf in Dublin, ran right through the middle of the country. It was unbelievably tough. The hardest thing I ever did was the end of day 2 and the start of day 3. My body was in absolute ribbons, but the whole purpose was to try and challenge myself and to see could I take myself to a point where I had never been before. Now the run across Ireland, I'm not going to go through it in much detail here because I could talk about it for 2 or 3 hours, that run alone. But I achieved a run across Ireland and I could go to South Africa, work with the charity and help them profit off my suffering. Now unfortunately I didn't raise enough money for the charity work, so I had to pay a good bit of it myself, which wasn't the plan. But even as that, if I had to pay some of it myself, I still think I'm going to do the Melon Educate a couple of more times in the future. So the whole point of this video is I'm about to start into my biggest physical challenge of this year. And I want you to be consciously aware that you are grossly underestimating your potential physically. Okay, maybe you can't be David Clifford on the football pitch, or you can't be Ronaldo on the soccer pitch. And you think, I can't do that, I'm not a special athlete. I was a very, very average athlete, and I've done a lot of incredible things that would make the younger version of myself extremely proud. So in just 1 year, I could do a detox and a 5-day fast, which so many people say to me, oh my God, I could never do that. It's impossible. Even though they could do it. I did a photo shoot at the end of that and was super happy with my physique and the presentation in the photo shoot. Then I moved on to a bodybuilding style prep. I learned advanced gymnastic skills like rope climbing, muscle ups, and handstand push-ups. So many people think those are impossible, and I did a bodybuilding prep along with them. Trust me, I'm very, very average. You can at least make huge progress in both of those things in the next 5 months if you put your mind to it. And then finally, most people think they can't run a fucking half marathon. It drives me insane sometimes how people's self-limiting beliefs tell them that they can't even run a half marathon when they could run 100 kilometers if they truly believed they had to, and if they went after their goal like their life depended on it. Don't underestimate yourself. Set big goals that scare you, that motivate you, that make you want to be obsessed with something, and it will bring your life and your character to the next level. All of these physical challenges that I've set myself in the last 10 years have developed me in a way that I can't describe with words. They've led me to the most incredible places, friends and connections all over the world, and you have the opportunity to do these physical challenges in your own way. So don't underestimate yourself. Set a big goal and let's go.